gambling in Havana. I took a little risk. Send lawyers, guns, and money. Dad, get me out of this. Ha!
So welcome everyone. This is the second time we've done this redo. We're here with a couple of real close friends of mine. I'm real honored to be up here. We've got former Sheriff Bob Braudis, 6 times.
Former Steve Cohen.
1986 to 2010. He's going to talk about his involvement with this great project. And then we've got Steve Cohen here, famous contractor.
Former Steve Cohen.
Former what?
Former Steve Cohen.
Yeah. Living legend. And we're going to do a short talk tonight about the Gonzo Monument. We've got a model of it over here. The idea for this came from Hunter himself. And when Hunter died, he had his dreams put forth into action by Steve and Bob and a number of friends of his. So we're going to start with a short clip from the movie When I Die, which is by Wayne Ewing. It's a great film, and we have copies online at gonzogallery.com. So I'm going to show a short clip. We're going to go back and forth from the clip, from talking. If you have any questions, feel free to just pipe up.
It's going to be a pile of rocks about 100 feet tall, and then a giant chrome sort of a cylinder, more like but in a conical sort of round and tapering down to the top at 150 feet tall, hollow inside. With on top of the sort of big arm would be a fist with a double thumb, you know, the symbol. I told you 1,000 times for 10 years, you've got to put 2 thumbs in the fist.
You put the other thumb. Come on.
I'll put it on there because it's going to be on there in the end. Oh yeah, it's in the will. You know, it's all described. It's going to be a little hard to do, particularly with me going. But I think it'd be a nice monument. After the cremation, we put the ashes in a canister and shoot it out the top of the fist over the valley, and up, gets up about, say, 500 feet up, explodes, and the ashes drift down all over here. And that's it. That's my funeral.
So we were setting up a planning scenario using multiple agencies as if this was going to be a huge Woodstock type of event. We were planning on negative eventualities to the extreme. And we were also telling the family, Hunter's survivors, that they needed to get a special commercial land use permit. While we were mulling that over, I got to meet Steve Cohen. And tell us a little about how you got this gig through Johnny Depp, Steve.
Well, I worked for Johnny Depp for about 10 years prior. And
doing what?
Building all his, dreams and whatever he wanted to have built. And the unfortunate morning when I got called into his office when Hunter had taken his life, he brought me into his office and met with Layla, the producer of Fear and Loathing, and George Tobia, and he discussed, I didn't really know what was going on, but we watched that interview, the BBC interview of him explaining his funeral, and he said, okay, you have to build this. And I said, okay, we'll do it. That's how it went down.
Wow. Like I was saying, we said, hey, we're going to have a big crowd here, traffic, security, you name it, and they got to get a special commercial land use permit. And then Joey or Steve Crockett said, hey, this is a dude's funeral in the dude's backyard. Why do you need any permits? So all of a sudden we said, hey, you don't need any permits. Let's just do it. But we had one wrinkle. It had been a drought summer, and all of the vegetation here was parched. The fire danger was extreme, and I, along with the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management and every other agency declared a burn ban. You couldn't even smoke outside of a vehicle. It was a really scary fire scenario, and here we are wanting to launch Hunter's ashes into the air with huge pyrotechnics. So DJ, could you run that clip of us talking about the burn ban?
A dry summer has led to a burn ban in Pitkin County. Even smoking outside is prohibited. So the trick is to create a fireworks display that will be safe and politically acceptable.
Pam and Jay are local pyrotechnic resources.
Perfect.
Daryl's the fire chief and this is in his district. Let's start with Matt telling us what you can do that you consider safe.
The best scenario that I've looked at is star mines and aerial salutes. Aerial salutes is a detonation. It's not going to have the embers coming down, and we can disperse the ashes. You know?
This thing goes boom. It's
Right.
a mine. That's what it does. It's like a fountain, and you know.
So it's just basically a fountain then.
This is a star mine. And we do all the Broncos games with this kind of material. I mean, it's all what goes up doesn't come down.
Okay.
Close proximity. Okay.
You're gonna get, I'm very blunt, more bang for your buck.
Right.
And I'm a big fan of bang for buck.
Right.
And I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, I don't care about bang for the buck. I care about
Safety.
life and property safety.
Right.
And
The shells that you're shooting up here, I could see any one of those scenarios probably being safe here.
It's well within the realm of safety. The salutes are going to go bang, and that's it. It's not burning embers, and the mines are fine too.
okay, so unless something gets really weird in the form of a deepening drought, hot, windy days, the fuels are acceptable for what Matt is proposing.
Go 200 either side of your tower.
Okay.
Mow and water.
That took care of our own self-imposed burn ban. We lifted ourselves. Being in an elected position comes in handy. You want to do the time lapse?
Yep. And just to give you guys an idea of the scale of this project, you know, in the monument, you can take a look afterwards, but you can see how small the people are. There's a time lapse in the movie here that I'm just going to show briefly that gives you an idea of the scale of this project.
Wasn't it 20 feet taller than the Statue of Liberty?
Two feet taller.
2 feet taller. And that was one of Hunter's requirements.
Specification.
That's 52 and a half feet. That takes us up to where the fist goes on. And the knife, this is all in pieces.
We'll get this undressed and we'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, now we can go ahead. Does the knife penetrate this section back here?
Yeah.
How
Well, it
far
doesn't
back?
actually penetrate it.
How
It
far-
sits on top of it. It's just laying on top. Think of that as a big canoe. The knife's just laying inside it.
Well, who's this writer? Somebody told me that he was into drugs and guns and could write. Is that him?
My kind of guy.
And one of the stories I like to hear about all this is people coming from Hollywood and LA, when they come here, you know, we have sort of stereotypes that we think of, and there was a quick story of when Bob saw Steve, you know, they had been working together here and there, but there was a number of posts that they had to build to secure the cannon from falling over. And so in this big pit, there's you know, cement being laid in, all this stuff, and Steve's in the thick of it, down there in the cement, land these dead men forms to try to keep the thing from falling over. And
I had to get my Aspen street cred.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, Johnny
Right.
Depp sent a team of 2 out here, Steve Cohen and a guy named John Eckes, which was a made-up name which stood for Johnny X. He was sort of the party planner. Steve was the construction guy, and I went down to the construction site, as DJ said, and there's Steve Cohen with his shirt off down in a 12-foot hole, putting a big eye bolt into a slab of concrete that's going to attach to cables to hold the tower up in the wind, right?
Right.
I mean, he was a hands-on...
I don't think my shirt was off. I think
He was a hands-on construction guy, and we immediately bonded.
And we've got another guy that sort of, he brushed over. There's a guy named Johnny X, and we're going to play a clip in just a second that gives you an idea of his character. But he was an eccentric guy who was sort of a Hollywood type and
alarmist.
An alarmist, and he had a lot of a weird character. He had a tortoise that he would keep with him, and he would lose the tortoise. He wouldn't be paying attention, and he'd be looking for it, and he'd attach these feathers on top of the tortoise's back so that when he was hanging out, he could look out on the field and then see where the tortoise was.
It was an arrow with feathers.
An arrow on top of the tortoise, and not to put you on the spot, but I think Joey met this tortoise at one point in time.
I did in fact meet this tortoise.
You gotta stand up. You gotta stand up and tell the story.
Oh, Joe.
Yeah, Joey.
When I first met the tortoise, it was at the house that you're about to show the clip of, where Johnny was at the long table doing his holding court. This tortoise was roughly 18 inches to 2 feet around. And Johnny had told me that when he first got the tortoise, it was involved in a house fire somewhere in Manhattan on an upper floor. And there was a fire in the apartment while Johnny was at work. And the tortoise had been scalded horribly. And on the tortoise's shell, it was really like kind of like dry and nasty scaly because the thing had survived the fucking fire. So he brings it to Colorado and puts it in the yard of this house that was rented as kind of the command post / a gathering place for Johnny X and the rest. Is that right, Steve?
Right.
And I had immediately connected Steve and Johnny as partners. And in later years, long after, I realized that they couldn't have been too different. So Johnny's got this scarred tortoise that would wander around the backyard of this command post with the feather and the arrow flopping around. And one afternoon, he brings it to my house for a couple of cocktails on my front porch, and Bob there and some group of people, and the tortoise is there. And it's my first time I've ever seen a tortoise. That close up anyway. And I hold it up, and I'm looking at the tortoise like this, and when tortoises pee, they pee like a 1/4-inch string with real force, and the tortoise started to piss all over. And it was the fucking worst experience. I put the tortoise down, and we all start breaking up. This is hysterical. And I lift the tortoise up again, and it starts to pee all over me a second time. Even on the slow burner. That's actually the last time I've seen a tortoise or Johnny X. And since then, I have to say that Steve, these two guys couldn't be more opposite, and this is the real deal, and I'm so happy you're here. I won't be there Sunday.
Bullshit. I'll never pee on you. I'll never pee on you unless you don't come Sunday.
Should I tell them about the reach around with the tortoise?
There's a secret.
It's got your name on it.
And I want to say also we're really honored here to have Anita Thompson, 100 foot up. We had a big part in making this whole thing happen, and you'll see her on the film here in just a second. I'm going to show another quick time lapse of the cannon being built, and then there will be a short clip of Johnny X, and so you can see him in action.
I've got two 200,000 watt generators showing up Tuesday morning. Got enough power to light up Aspen. Priority for tomorrow, Vanessa, you're handling the issue of the horse evacuation.
Yes.
And this is what's happening, guys. For the pyrotechnics, okay, for firing Hunter's ashes, okay, originally we were going to send up approximately 4 shells with his ashes, but because Hunter was such a tall and big boned guy, we're sending up 24 all at once. This thing is going to have the equivalent concussive effect of a sonic boom by jet aircraft. So I have to evacuate all the horses from this valley.
Wow.
But this is absolutely critical. In addition, the liner notes about the residents putting their dogs inside and any other animals, because the last thing I need is chickens and roosters jumping in the air, feathers flying, and they're missing. For those of you who have not met Keith Greco, Keith is my art director. Well, guys, we have entered that phase in the production now where I feel very confident that what we're going to do is going to go very smoothly. Part of the process, of course, is going to be improvisation, especially in the install phase of the decor, because Keith has brought so much that we could probably do 3 of these tents.
I think we have just enough.
Well, I heard on the street otherwise, but
there's a lot of gear.
There's a lot of gear.
Cannon! Load cannon!
I got it.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, don't impale me. That goes right on that. You can just set it right on top of that kiosk in the middle. Yeah, that's the bar, the bookcase bar. This is the bar top, so we want to put them all face up.
What is that?
It's a refrigerator that matches the one in Hunter's house, so that you can self-help at the party. Grab your own beer.
That's great.
Peacock feathers and buffalo head. The Oxford Dictionary, which has got the word gonzo in it, somewhere. I think it's in the G's. Right there. Gonzo.
Wow, look at the color.
It's got a black crown on the top.
That is gorgeous.
I got one of those. Then I have a green one that I'm dying to see that I actually think is the one that matches the one in his house.
Oh, the drum right here.
I got another one that I'm looking for.
Where'd you find this stuff?
Some of it's from my house. And then some of it's from the local St. Vincent de Paul's, but a lot of it's from the local prop houses in Hollywood.
And also, they had a very elaborate idea for how they were going to reveal this monument, and Steve's going to talk a minute about that.
Well, during the whole construction, it had to be covered up so that there couldn't be any photographs taken of it prior to its, unveiling. And so that was a struggle in itself, but there was a lot of, the original idea was to have a Kentucky state flag draped, a giant Kentucky state flag draped in front of it so that it blocked it from view of the people there. But the wind and the elements and the size that it would have to be. Well, all of that made that impossible. So at the probably 4 or 5 days prior up to that, leading up to the event, we didn't have a plan exactly. So we came up with an idea to construct a drape over the whole monument that could be taken off, and it was all red ripstop nylon that was covered, draping the whole thing, and then the unveiling process was pulling it up through the fist from the top, pull it up from the bottom, and just took it all up and pulled it out. It was like a stripper almost. It was like a stripper. It was laced up in the front, this red nylon that was all laced up, and then it just opened up and got sucked out of the top of the fist. It ended up pretty great for the short amount of time we had to come up with the idea of how to do it.
Later after the event, I'll pull out some of the plans that went into this. They did countless architectural drawings and everything planned out to a T. But the actual event itself, I think we'll get into that a little bit and talk about some of the interesting types there. Hunter had countless friends that he had corresponded with over the years, lots of pen pals, so to speak. And everybody came out for the event. And one of my favorite stories that I heard secondhand, I wasn't lucky enough to be there, but was a number of people standing there, and there's this tall guy sort of blocking the view in front of George McGovern. And George McGovern was a real close friend of Hunter's. And he said about Hunter's book, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, that it was the least factual but most accurate portrayal of the campaign. And that's always been my favorite book of Hunter's. And so George McGovern's there, and there's this huge guy sort of blocking the view, and a friend of his says, I'm just going to go up and tap on the guy's shoulder and tell him to move over. And sure enough, the guy turns around, and it's John Kerry. And so it gives you an idea, Jack Nicholson, Johnny Depp, John Kerry, various other people. And we were lucky to have Emma here at our last event, and she was in charge of the guest list. It was 450 people, sort of the hottest ticket in town, to say the least. I don't know if you want to say anything about people asking you for tickets, or...
I tried to be a fair broker. I mean, I was talking to Anita throughout it, and usually we agreed. If Anita didn't know a person's history with Hunter, I would explain it. If it met her standards, she'd go, sure, he should be there, she should be there. If it was someone casual, Anita said no. So we tried to be real fair and balanced, like Fox News. And it was, as DJ said, a hot ticket. There was a huge fear of paparazzi invading over the ridges, helicopters swooping in. We were ready for everything, and nothing really happened. It was a peaceful funeral with an awful lot of drugs and alcohol, and great music, and really good pyrotechnics.
And a great sheriff's department.
Yeah, I had a Joey.
And a lot of my friends tell stories sort of like it was mythical. A lot of my friends that weren't close enough with Hunter, they were all sort of in the woods way up on the ridge lines eating mushrooms and watching from afar. And even to this day, so many people come into the gallery and they say, we were out on Highway 82 and you could see it from, Owl Creek. And, countless people from around the area watched it from above or afar, so to speak. I also want to give a couple quick stories similar about, the legend of the party itself. Steve had a lot of legendary stories about, there were legendary stories about Steve.
Yes, right.
And his work.
Fiction mostly, I'm sure.
And I think also he might have set the record. They're about to demolish the Sky Hotel this spring. and he will go down as having the largest room service bill in Sky Hotel history.
Is that right? Have we got that right? Okay, good.
And as well as a healthy tab. But everyone who ran across him during the project
was tortured.
Couldn't praise him enough. We got a question at the back.
How much was the bill? Repeat the question for me.
I think it was like 70-something thousand.
Yeah, it's 70,000.
A day.
No. That was for 2 months.
No, that.
2.5 months.
Bob might tell a story about him. You were brought in and asked some questions about the bill, weren't you, at the Hotel Jerome?
That was full price. That was no. I got no discount.
No, there were questions from Johnny Depp's sister and Johnny Depp's accountant about Johnny X, and I met with them. I think you were there. The whole thing was it was a $2 million funeral, right? And hardly any corruption. Most of that money went to the funeral.
Yes.
And champagne.
And my room service.
Right. I have to tell my favorite story. I was a very close friend to Hunter's, and we were all sad. I was very sad. And that night, I got into the vodka, probably a bottle of vodka. And I had a driver. His name was Ron Ryan. He's now Joey DeSalvo's undersheriff. But
he pulled me over.
Ron Ryan was my driver, and at 4 a.m, I hit the wall. I had talked to everyone, I had mourned, I had partied. It was time to go home. I was with my girlfriend at the time, Dee Dee Brinkman. Dee Dee had a bag of her mother's ashes. She thought somehow I could talk to Anita and get her mother's ashes mixed in with Hunter's, and her mom could go into the stratosphere. Well, it didn't happen. Now at 4 a.m, I'm riding home with Deputy Ron Ryan and Dee Dee goes, "Shit, I left my mother's ashes on the bar." Ron Ryan turned around and said, "That sounds like a country song to me." Anyone got any questions or comments?
We've got one more sort of final clip that we're going to play.
I have a question. Where is the monument today?
That is a good question.
You had an answer last month.
Well, it's the same one. I believe it's in some storage facility, with the Ark of the Covenant from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Or Barstow.
And we're trying to pry it out of there for a Burning Man event. Either this year, we tried last year, but it was a little too late.
The Goldsteins are going to Burning Man.
It'll be out there.
Yeah, baby.
In a luxury motorhome.
Right. Jerry, if we can get you to try to dig that thing up, we'll get it out there for you.
So I'm going to play one more final clip. This one's probably the longest clip we're going to play. It's 4 minutes long. And it's going to show sort of the scale and the party and the event. I do want to take some more questions from the crowd because I know you guys probably do have some questions for these legends. I also want to say these are the plans of the monument, and we're going to set them on the table out there. And they're kind of fun to see the actual blueprints from it. And we also have a few of these amazing Flying Dog beers that were made for the monument event, courtesy of Don Stuber. And I'll say a quick word about the beer real quick. Jim Caruso did an amazing job, along with George Stranahan, making a special batch of brews with the monument on the beers.
I never got any of those.
And 10 years to the day, they're still good.
I never got one.
Putting you on the spot. Question, Tori.
Wait, so before you go to those blueprints and show that, Steve, will you talk about how did it go from, and I don't know the full history, but I think there was a Stedman drawing of the monument prior? Or there was
the BBC interview had the clip that we showed at the very beginning was they were at a mortuary in Hollywood talking to him about designing a funeral, and Ralph was drawing that.
So then, can you just talk for a second about how it went from a simple drawing on paper to actual reality and construction?
Well, so the simple drawing on paper, that the first time I ever saw that interview was in Johnny's office the day after it happened. And so I watched that interview, I saw that sketch that Ralph did, and I just did my own sketch. And then we did it from there.
How long did it take to build it?
How long did it take to build it is the question.
Okay, from that day until it was up was 6 months. 6 months.
Did Hunter have an exact date of when he wanted his ashes to be blasted off?
Well, I don't think no.
But it was about like 6 months after he had died, right? That
6 months to the day.
Yeah,
to the
like
day.
6 months to the day. So yeah.
And they broke ground on Hunter's birthday on July 18th. Yeah, and in the sky that day, we saw for the first time at Owl Farm a baby red-tailed hawk learning how to fly. It was squawking around while they were putting the road down, the road base, and this bird was freaking out, and the mom was just sailing around peacefully, like really in a calm state while the baby learned how to fly. We got to witness this on their first day. It was really cool.
Yeah, it happened very fast. It came together fast.
Why did you
for
have
the
to take the
site.
monument down?
Pardon?
So the question was, why did you have to take the monument down?
Good
Bob,
question.
why did we have to take the
Good
monument
question.
down?
He didn't have a permanent permit.
I had to
He never
agree
would have
that it
got
was going to
one.
be taken down within a certain amount of time.
The FAA.
3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Oh.
And so I
No,
had to
you-
agree. And
It was
10
probably
days.
Up for 10 days.
Oh, it was up longer than that. It was up for, I think it was up for 3 weeks.
It was the tallest structure between Denver and Salt Lake City while it was up.
Next to you,
Bob.
Any other questions out there? Yeah,
Steve,
in
what
the
about
back.
the tickets?
What's that?
What about the tickets?
What tickets? Oh, tickets. The tickets?
What's the
The
question?
delivery
in
of
the
the,
back?
what, the tickets? The invitations?
Yeah, the invitation.
Okay. Matt Mosley back there.
Yeah, legend, Matt Mosley.
The first day I ever met Matt Mosley, and he was in charge of delivering the tickets from Boulder, Denver, somewhere down there, which I hadn't been down there yet, to Woody Creek Tavern. I was meeting him because they were under lock and key, and so he was driving up in a horrible rainstorm, and I said, I'll meet you at the tavern. So I was there, asked him what he wanted to drink. He was supposedly almost there, but he said, I think Tawaka and something, or margarita and something. So I ordered those. Half hour goes by. I drink his drinks, my drinks. And I call up, and he's like, I'm almost there, and I'm holding the Woody Creek Tavern open. He shows up, and he has the the holy grail of the tickets there, and we run up to the command post, and he claimed he had some good weed, and I said I think I had better weed, and then we've been friends ever since.
Serena, what was your question, Serena?
So my question was, there's very eloquent music involved with this ceremony. So the question is, was there any, who was involved with selecting the music to go along with this memorial?
Great question. So the question was, who was in charge of the soundtrack? Maybe Anita?
Well, Hunter was sort of in charge of the soundtrack. He created a CD, or an album called Where Were You When the Fun Stopped in 1998, 1999. And Mr. Tambourine Man was sort of his anthem throughout life anyway, so this was an appropriate way to celebrate his life. It was with Mr. Tambourine Man and Carmelita and some of the other songs in here. So Hunter sort of chose it for us.
He did choose it, and I demanded that Spirit in the Sky by Norman Greenbaum was the one when it was all coming out. That was perfect.
And that's a great question, because one thing I've heard about the party was the drugs were great, the booze was great, the people were great, but the music was awesome.
It was awesome.
Big drum.
Drums. Any other questions before we wrap it up, Chrissy?
Anita, could you tell us where he was cremated and how he got the ashes?
Oh, yeah.
That's an amazing.
Repeat the question.
What's the question?
And were Dee Dee's mother's ashes left behind, or did they go up?
Oh, that's a good ending. The next morning, Dee Dee and I were having breakfast on the banks of the Roaring Fork River at Ed Bradley's house when Dave Meeker, the big bodyguard, walked down and gave Dee Dee a baggie with her mother's ashes in it. And Dee Dee threw them in the Roaring Fork River.
Wait, but that was 80% cocaine.
So I want to thank everybody for coming. Oh yeah, the transportation of the ashes. Yeah, that's a great.
Hunter was cremated at Farnham Holt Funeral Home in Glenwood Springs, and they made some exceptions for Hunter. They let us put his favorite music in with him. It was a very big deal. They let me dress him. They made a lot of exceptions for this man. And his ashes, we flew them personally to the Zambelli Fireworks place in Pennsylvania, where they have bunkers the size of this room, like 40 of them for acres. And they let me put, because I wanted to make sure that Hunter's ashes, although spirit was no longer there, his body's precious. So they let me put the ashes inside each firework myself, and then they sealed them, and I wrote a little initial and a little heart on each one. So when they came back in the armored truck, they came back with the same initial, and we knew that they were Hunter's ashes.
Any other questions before we wrap up? Okay, I want to thank everybody for coming.
Thank
this
you.
is a real pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Like I mentioned, we have some vintage.
I need a full pack of those. I don't even know one.
Here you go. This is for you. This is a gift.
We don't have any more.
Yep. We do have some more. We'll pull them out. And this is part of our Liberty Salon series at the Gonzo Gallery. We're going to be hosting events all winter long. We have an event tomorrow night. Please come and keep posted on our Facebook page or at gonzogallery.com. And thank you so much.
I was gambling in Havana. I took a look